Whenever we talk about alternatives to capitalism, chances are that we return to the fundamentals, to the question of what any economic system is and what it does. The answer is often twofold in every civilization, whether communal hunting and gathering or global industrial capitalism. So what, then, would be the perfect alternative to capitalism? That is, if there's any at all. Well, stay till the end to find out. We discussed a twofold answer in the opening, so here's what they look like. The first is concerned with how a society produces commodities and services. In one sense, this refers to how something is made and what is used to make it. Hunter-gatherers, for example, do not grow crops. Still, agricultural cultures use plows to cultivate fields, and industrial societies employ heavy machinery and other technologies to plant, harvest, prepare food, and even create part of it in the lab. In another sense, production is also social. People are structured in relationships that produce products and services. It is the difference between shoes created by independent shoemakers in tiny shops and shoes mass-produced by worker employees in factories owned by someone else. The second thing to understand about an economic system is what happens to what is produced, how it is dispersed among society's members, and who benefits. To find an alternative to this economic practice, let's ask ourselves what capitalism aims for and how it affects industries. One crucial thing to understand about industrial capitalism is that it is not organized to suit the demands of its participants. It is not the first system for which this is true, but it is the most recent version and rules the world. To sell commodities and generate a profit, capitalists must develop items that people need, or if not, persuade them that they need them. If capitalism happens to meet people's wants, as a result, that is great. But that is not the objective of the system. The goal is to empower people to compete with one another to maximize their wealth. Within rather broad limitations, how this impacts everyone else is mostly irrelevant. This means that when a small percentage of the population takes most of the wealth for themselves, the system is merely doing its job. If millions of people lack adequate food, shelter or healthcare, roads, bridges, and schools crumble, or if the earth and other species are being degraded or destroyed, none of this is evidence that the economic system is collapsing. To discover how this manifests, simply examine the list of economic indicators used to assess the economy's health. There is little to assess the quality of people's daily lives or the extent to which their human needs are addressed. Not to mention the well-being of the earth and non-human species, whose fate is inextricably linked to our own. Such items are not reflected because they are irrelevant to the capitalist economic system. So, what would be the perfect economic system besides capitalism? It is quite simple. An economic system intended first and foremost to suit the needs of humans, the earth, and the non-human species who call it home. One that recognizes the biological and moral reality that we are all in this together. And how are we going to get there? We can only start where we are, with the holy assumption of capitalism that pursuing individual greed can be the foundation of a moral society and a sustainable planet. Changing the rules that allow and encourage the unlimited and unaccountable private accumulation of wealth, massive and reckless gambling and speculation in the financial industry that enriches the few while causing disaster for everyone else, and the power of wealth to control major institutions, including the political system, will be necessary to challenge this assumption. Tomorrow, some clever economists may devise a system that revolutionizes how we manage economies to such a degree that it will be like entering the space age. It sounds unbelievable, but it has already happened, and the consequences have been enormous. The introduction and widespread use of steam power and a few other technologies were largely regarded as the drivers of the Industrial Revolution, which launched humanity on our current path of huge global economic growth. But there was something else going on in the world at this time. How U.S. economy ran before the 21st century. Before economics was an academic discipline, the global economy was run on mercantilism. The mercantile principle held that an economy should attempt to export as much as possible, while importing as little as possible to collect as much gold as possible. This made perfect sense to a civilization that had not yet studied economics, because gold was virtually widely accepted as a store of value. You should acquire as much gold as possible if you wanted to be wealthy. Of course, mercantilism is not how we run our economies today because economic research has shown that economic cooperation and free trade generate significantly more wealth overall. After all, certain regions have advantages in producing certain items, and if we all just do what we are good at, the world becomes richer. It also allows for producing products that could not be produced inside the boundaries of a single country, no matter how large. You're probably gaining some economic benefit from watching this video right now, which you make credit to the technology that has enabled it. Consider the sophisticated economic structures that coordinate all of that technology. Our economies are also wealthier now due to the teachings of thinkers like Keynes, who demonstrated that the business cycle could be regulated by governments from X to X, so that economies could continue to grow wealthier over time. Could we be operating in neo-Keynesianism? John Maynard Keynes, 1883 to 1946, was a British economist of the early 20th century who is best known as the originator of Keynesian economics and the father of contemporary macroeconomics, the study of how economies, markets, and other large-scale systems behave. Today, most economists in positions of power subscribe to the neo-Keynesian school of economics, which lays out how to run an economy by effectively managing debt, employment, inflation, taxation, and supply-side output to generate unimaginable wealth when Keynes was alive. It is tempting to believe that economics has been solved and that we will never again experience a wealth boom like the one we had when we transitioned from mercantilism to embrace the business cycle. But since we do not know what we do not know, it is perhaps more useful to ask, what are the economic limits? Economics is not a magical science. It cannot create wealth where none exists. It can only advise people on the most efficient deployment of resources. To reach a desired conclusion, that outcome should ideally be equitable prosperity for all participants in that economy. Even if it isn't, a thorough understanding of economics can help you get a society where you want it to go. Economics' second restriction is that it cannot be utilized to forecast the future. After contributing to building our modern knowledge of the economic cycle, John Maynard Keynes attempted to grow his fortune by investing based on the expected ups and downs of the economy. It did not work over time. Economists are frequently praised or chastised for making future predictions that either come true or do not come true, as the case may be. Unquestionably, the joke would be on them if they attempted to make predictions, yet nobody, least of all economists, can predict the future. Nobody would think less of a doctor who indicated that someone's outlook was healthy with nothing to worry about. Then that person went on to suffer a terrible sickness because it is not their business to forecast someone's medical future. Similarly, economists can look at the data at their disposal and conclude that there is no cause for concern, only for something to occur that shows there was wrong. Economists should not try to foretell the future. Instead, they should provide recommendations for the present to promote economic growth and lessen negative consequences or make them less likely in the future. The following restriction of economics is that it is a very difficult topic to learn. We do not imply that it is difficult for an undergraduate student to understand an indifference curve. We will gladly admit that several subjects are significantly more difficult than economics. Howbeit, what we mean is that studying new economic theories is extremely difficult because you cannot create an economy in a lab. National economies will not change how they operate just to test a theory that could make them better off overall. Because if that theory does not work, they have potentially made the lives of millions of people worse. This difficulty in investigating and confirming economic theories may appear disheartening because it implies that development is slow. Still, delayed growth may indicate that we will benefit from economic advancements for future generations. There is most likely an economic system out there that encourages innovation, motivates workers, and rewards clever capital allocation while actively avoiding the negative externalities that are so prevalent in today's market economies. What would that entail? To be honest, no one knows. We would be collecting a Nobel Prize right now if we could demonstrate a way to run our economy differently that would result in greater wealth generation for the world. However, the good news is that we most likely know very little about economics. If nothing else, all of the global craziness right now is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to study so that we are better prepared for the next time. Remember to subscribe to our channel if you found this content valuable.